is Professor Sumit Agarwal, Low Tak Kwong Distinguished Professor of Finance at the Business School and Professor of Economics and Real Estate at the National University of Singapore. He's also Managing Director of the Sustainable and Green Finance Institute at NUS and the President of the Asian Bureau of Finance and Economic Research. Professor Agarwal's research interest includes issues relating to household sustainability, financial institutions, household finance, behavioral finance, and real estate markets. He has published over 125 research articles, co-written 6 books, and co-edited 2 collected volumes. He writes regular opinion editorials for the Straits Times and has been featured on various media outlets like the BBC, CNBC, and Fox. Professor Agarwal's research is widely cited in leading publications like the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, The Economist, and the US President's Report to Congress. He also runs a podcast on household financial decision-making called Casunomics. Professor Agarwal, please.
Thank you. Let me load up my slides. Let's go. Welcome to everybody. I know it's a Saturday and it's early, so I will try to keep it interesting for you guys. What I want to talk about is the impact of financial technology, the real impact. What is the impact that you can see? And I'm going to specifically look at introduction of the QR code mobile payment technology in Singapore. Okay. I have to acknowledge this is joint work with my co-authors who are also professors at NUS. Okay, so to start out with, I want to think about, motivate this to think about what is the effect of FinTech on real economy. Now, technology has been kind of permeating in the financial service sector in different ways. You can think about investments. If you want to make investment decisions these days, you can actually go use a website and it will help you to make financial decisions. There is robo-advisors. You don't need to go talk to an advisor. A robo-advisor will tell you which investment funds, mutual funds, stocks to buy, and what the returns potentially will be on them. In lending, you can go to a bank. Typically, you used to talk to a loan officer. Now you can go to a website. You're talking to a machine, and the machine will determine if you're credible or if you have enough credit worthiness to borrow, and they will actually give you money. Payments is where we have seen the most proliferation of technology. I mean, 10 years ago, most of us were using cash, but these days we are more and more using our phones to make payments. I mean, if you go to China or Northern Europe, pretty much they have removed cash in circulation. And so that's the big question. What is FinTech doing in the real sector, especially in the payment mode? If you think about mobile payment technology in China, the transactions have reached around $42 billion just in 2018. After COVID, these numbers have skyrocketed all over the world. So the question then becomes is what is the trade-off between using mobile payments versus cash? Obviously, the businesses, okay, like mobile payment technology instead of cash. In the cash, if you're running a hawker center, there's one person who is cooking and serving food and also managing the cash register. It's kind of cumbersome. But if you just use QR code technology, then you can just make the payment and that person doesn't have to deal with taking cash, giving you change for it. They can continue and become more efficient in that process. They don't have to go deposit the cash in the ATM machine at the end of the day or withdraw change in the morning to deal with the customers. Customers also like technology because dealing with cash is cumbersome for the consumers. They need to withdraw money every time. But consumers also like credit cards. When they want to use mobile payments, it's not clear mobile payments dominate for consumers when they have to use. they would prefer credit cards because credit cards give them rewards. Credit card transactions are protected for insurance and many other benefits credit cards carry. I mean, the downside of credit cards is that it can actually be a little bit cause you to get into this debt cycle and kind of addicted into using credit. Now, if you think about banks, obviously banks love technology because banks have to kind of manage ATM machines all over the country in Singapore. And you have to kind of, there is a risk of, putting money in there, theft, and who knows what else can happen. So they want to make sure that they actually don't have ATM machines, they don't carry cash, and they can create all transactions electronically. This allows them to keep records of these transactions also, because these are all electronic transactions. Okay, so then the question becomes is, we can see there is cost and benefit for merchants, consumers, and banks on introducing mobile payment technology. Then we want to study what is the benefits and cost of this. The experimental setting I'm going to use is the introduction of the PayLah in April 2017 by DBS. So that was an unexpected introduction of this mobile payment technology. And we wanted to see what does that do to small business creation, because small businesses, if they have to rely on, credit cards or cash, it's costly. As I said, cash, they either have to need two people at the register, somebody handling cash, somebody cooking. But if they use technology, they may actually be able to get away with the person at the cashier, and the person who cooks can deal with it. So it reduces their cost of operations. Also, small businesses, if they have to use credit cards or debit cards, what happens is they have to buy those machines from Visa and MasterCard. And Visa and MasterCard charges them a lot, close to around $3,000 to just buy the equipment. And beyond that, every transaction that Visa and MasterCard processes for SMEs will cost them around 2% in interchange fee to the small merchant. So small merchants are very wary of using cash and or using credit or debit card transactions. They would definitely prefer QR codes. So we wanted to study, if you introduce QR codes, does it help small business creation and survival of small businesses in Singapore? We'll then also study what happens to consumers and what happens to banks, okay? So just to give you a sense of payment systems in Singapore, obviously, before this, cash was the dominant source of spending. 43% of monthly spending was happening through cash, and another 16% of spending was happening through credit cards. So we looked at this introduction of QR code technology by DBS in April 2017, and we started looking at what will happen to the consumers. Now, all of you are much more savvy in using this PayLah than I am. I'm still old, and so I tend to still use a little bit more cash than most people, but it's so easy. I mean, you just go use your phone, you take a picture of the QR code, and you just pay, and it's less than 10 seconds. Whereas when you are using cash, the process is slightly longer. There is also this argument people will make when you use cash. Cash is the most dirty thing that you carry around. It's being touched by, on average, 7 people before you. So you don't know what kind of viruses that you could be carrying when you're dealing with cash. So when we started looking at the data, what you see is just after the introduction of the QR code, what is happening to consumer spending on through mobile payments. So the red line is around when the QR code or the PayLah started, and then you can see a increase subsequent to that. And you can also see the number of people who signed up and the number of people who are actually using the PayLah to make their payments, okay? On the right-hand side, you also see the payment amounts in Singapore dollar terms, that they actually rise up quite significantly after the introduction of PayLah in terms of using mobile payments. So clearly, if I aggregate all of this up, it's around amounting to around $770 million that are being spent in 2018 only because of this mobile payment technology by the banks. Okay. So to study this kind of behavior, I mean, it's very time consuming. And if we do want to do it carefully, we need to get a lot of micro data to see and follow the data and what we can learn. So what we did is we first went to the ACRA data, which is the Accounting and Corporate Regulatory Authority, and collected the data on all registered SMEs in Singapore. The firm name, which industry, registration date, location, and what kind of a legal entity that firm is in Singapore. That's a big database over the last 20 years to understand which firms are created and which firms close down over time. This allows us to then show, does QR code technology increase the number of firms that are registered in ACRA every year? Next, we went and talked to DBS, and we asked them to give us data on the consumer spending behavior using both cash, QR code technology, credit cards, and debit cards. So we collected a random sample of around 250,000 consumers from 2016 to 2018. Here we have very good detail on the consumers. We have transaction records. If you went to Starbucks, you paid by QR code technology and bought coffee for $7. I know precisely how you paid for that coffee, either through credit card, debit card, or through your mobile payment. I know some of the demographics, the age, gender, occupation of the consumer. So this allows me to study more in depth. Finally, I also know the population of all ATM machines, where they are located, what is the transaction amount in the ATM machines, and the time. This allows me to show that once the QR code technology is adopted and introduced, do banks then cut back on an ATM machines, because ATM machines are costly for banks to operate and populate the money in these ATM machines. There has to be a security guard who carries the money, and somebody to protect him in case, there are some bad people who may want to rob these guys. Okay. If you just look at the raw data, we created these two groups of businesses, one who will be impacted by QR code technology, and one who will not be, especially small businesses who will be more likely to be taking up business creation because of QR code, and businesses who will not. So if you look at the two lines that I'm plotting here, I'm plotting the businesses which I'm calling as treated as the red line, and control, which is the black line. And what you see is, after the introduction of QR code technology, which is on the x-axis 0.0, you start seeing a divergence in these two lines, and more businesses are created that are essentially what I'm calling as treated. The way I want you guys to think about it is in medical research, when they actually give a placebo and a treatment drug to some people and a placebo to other people. This is how we are thinking about what the QR code technology is essentially doing to some businesses and not to other businesses. And the businesses that are essentially in the treated group are increasing their introduction into the economy. Now, this is another way to look at it. Now, I know a lot of you guys are econ students, so you may not be familiar with running a regression or doing statistical work. So just trust me that what we are doing here is pretty kosher, in some sense that we are controlling for everything and then telling you what is the response of QR code technology on business creation. And if you look at small merchants, they benefit quite a lot. That small merchants creation goes up by 12.3%, but large merchants actually do not benefit at all. And there is no response to large merchants to the introduction of QR code technology. So in other words, the way I want you guys to think about it, the QR code technology itself helped create around 156 small businesses every month in Singapore. Now, that's non-trivial. I mean, there was a small mom and pop shop that was worried about financial constraints. If I start this business, will I be able to survive? What will happen? Now, all of a sudden, they realize their cost of doing business goes down because they don't have to buy a terminal from MasterCard or Visa or they can cut down on the labor supply because they don't need to hire a second person to manage the cash register. So they now my constraints go down. I can start my small business and still be profitable. So that's the underlying argument on why this kind of works. Next, we started looking at where does this QR code technology really work? Does it work in low price housing areas, non-prime areas, public housing in areas? And this is where we see the biggest impact. And it makes sense because remember, these are the people who will be constrained, businesses who will be constrained to start up their small business. But once you introduce QR code, they realize, okay, now it works, and these will be located in lower income areas. So the story you can think about broadly is that technology is creating inclusive growth in the economy because it's not helping the rich or the upper class. It's helping actually the middle and lower class to benefit from technology and start a business and benefit. Okay. Now, if I think about why is this happening? I mean, you are all economists, you are potential economists in the future. You always want to think, I see a result, but why is this result there? Okay. What is the underlying mechanism for this result to hold? So as I said, for the merchant, it's about lowering the cost of handling cash because cash is costly for them to handle. They have to go to make a trip to the ATM machines and so on and so forth. So we started looking at what is happening to high cash transaction industries versus low cash transaction industries. Is there more creation of businesses in high cash transaction industries? So if you were dealing with a lot of cash before, like if you're a hawker center and other places where most of the business were being done in cash, retail and food industries, you are more likely to then create a small business after the introduction of the QR code technology. But if you're having low cash transaction industries, you really don't benefit from it as much. So you don't care about the QR code technology. And that's what we see. Most of the introduction of businesses because of this PELA is in high cash transaction industries. So that's for businesses. So you can see a real benefit of the PELA on small businesses. And I've kind of argued for you on which industries and which sectors of small businesses will benefit. What about consumers? Why will consumers use this? Because small business will only benefit if consumers use QR codes. Because if consumers don't adopt it, you can start a small business and put up your QR code and PayLa terminal. It will not be beneficial. So what is happening is it increases demand for consumers. Consumers spend more when they pay electronically versus when they pay in cash. Now, there is an argument made in psychology that says when I pay cash, there is this cost of losing money. When I take out money from my wallet and try to pay you, I feel this pain in me that I am becoming poorer. But when I used, electronic means, I don't feel the pain of losing money because it's just, paper money. So I don't feel the cost, and hence I increase my demand or my spending. And second argument is it facilitates the adoption and it facilitates me doing transactions at a faster pace because I don't have to stand in line in paying cash and getting my change back. So we started looking at those kind of things. Do mobile payments increase spending behavior? And you can clearly see that mobile payments clearly increase spending behavior. Here we are looking at what was happening to cash usage. Cash usage actually goes down by consumers. ATM withdrawal also goes down by consumers in a lot of the locations after the introduction of the QR code technology. So clearly you can see the facilitation argument of introducing QR code technology works. Payments, spending response is clearly positive. When you use QR code technology, column 2 is showing you that you're spending using the mobile app. using the PayLah actually is up. Whereas if you were using it just credits and credit card and debit card, it also goes up, but not by as much. So introduction of QR code technology is the most beneficial used through mobile payments. Finally, what about banks? I mean, I'm arguing that it benefits consumers, it benefits small businesses, but do banks benefit? If banks don't benefit with the introduction of QR code technology, maybe they will not introduce it, or they will try to push consumers to continue using credit cards and debit cards because those are highly profitable for banks because they generate a lot of revenue. But where will the additional revenue come from for the banks by introducing QR code technology? Essentially, it helps them cut cost. So here is a simple graph of a map of Singapore, and I'm showing you where firms are being created because of the introduction of the QR code technology and where the banks are able to close down their ATM locations. So DBS has lots and lots of ATMs all over the country. And what you see is when small businesses get created that are benefiting from QR code technology, those are the areas, same areas where the banks is closing down their ATM withdrawal locations. Why is that? Because now the small businesses are relying on QR code. Consumers don't need to withdraw cash. SMEs don't need to go to ATM machines to deposit the money at the end of the day. The bank realizes these ATMs are being underutilized because the money replenishment rate of the money is very low in these ATMs. So they are redundant. Let's just remove them. It saves us a lot of money by not having these ATM machines around in terms of managing the cash, in terms of the delivery and collection of the money from these ATM machines. Okay. This also allows the banks to generate other positive externalities because businesses will use, the bank can manage and directly observe the revenue and cash flow of these businesses because now it's all electronic as opposed to earlier, it was through cash, and the banks can then cross-sell them, sell them other products that will be beneficial to SMEs, okay? What else can I show you? Let me, we actually try to think about this very carefully on what are the benefits of consumers, merchants, and banks. And I'm not going to bore you with that, but in the research paper we write, if you guys are very interested, you can see how we think about it in terms of ATM closures, consumer benefits, and bank benefits. I will then just kind of conclude on this by showing that introduction of this mobile payment technology around the world has been very, very, very successful. Here I'm just showing you a case of Singapore. I've studied this in India, where there is a lot of introduction of various payment technologies. For instance, India has gone through this massive change through demonetization, where they removed cash from the entire country. Around 80% of the cash was gone. And I was trying to study after the removal of cash and introduction of various mobile payment technology, what was happening to consumer behavior and also small business creation. And you can see that significant increase. I mean, obviously cash came back. India, people still like to use cash because of tax evasion and other purposes. But even beyond that, India benefited tremendously because of the demonetization and introduction of the QR code technology. And the adoption was significant because India also introduced mobile payment, mobile use very cheaply, around $1 per month. You can use almost unlimited mobile services. So you need mobile services, you need payment technology, and you need some force that reduces usage of cash for this to work remarkably. And in Singapore, we know usage of cell phones or providing of internet is very cheap. And also with the QR code technology, this has helped Singapore consumers and small businesses. I'll stop here. I'll wait at the end of the discussion if you have any questions or comments on what I talked about. Thank you.